Hey guys, I'm John Setzler coming to you today on behalf of Atlanta Grill Company. I'm making a short video today to go along with a blog post this week on how to make ghee. And what ghee is it's clarified butter that's taken just to the next level to give it a little bit of nuttiness and a beautiful flavor and aroma. I use ghee for a lot of things, including pan searing, but when it comes to working on the grill, if I'm gonna sear a steak or chicken or something on a cast iron griddle, cast iron pan, or on a soapstone, I always use ghee. Ghee's got a really high smoke point of about 480 degrees. It brings a beautiful flavor, so it's the perfect searing fat. So let me show you how to make this. The first thing I want to do to make my ghee is melt butter, and when I make ghee I tend to make enough to last me a while, so I'm starting out with 3 pounds of unsalted butter. I'm just going to toss this in my saucepan, and over medium heat I'm going to melt this butter. You don't want to melt it too quickly because you do not want to brown the butter at this point. As our butter is almost melted, we want to keep an eye on it, and I turn the heat back down a little bit. There's still a few solid pieces of butter in here, and we're about 10 minutes in on this project because, like I said, you want to melt this slowly. So what I want to do now is bring this up to a rolling boil simmer. And after a few more minutes, that foam will subside and you'll be at a slow rolling boil. And I've backed my heat down on my stovetop here to about the number 2 setting on a 1 to 9 scale. So what we're going to do from here is we're just going to let this go. And what we're doing is boiling the water out of this butter, and we are separating the milk solids from the butter, which is what you see here in this foam, and some solids that will sink to the bottom. So we just want to let this go, and this will clarify during this process. So we'll be back. We've been going 20 minutes at this point, so I'm going to come back at about the 45 or 50 minute mark, and we'll have a look at what happens next. We're at the 45-minute mark, and it's still bubbling away, and the foam on top is still subsiding. What's happening is some of this solidifies, and it goes to the bottom, and you can kind of see that in the spoon here, but the butter's still not clarified, so we're going to let this continue to go, and as we go, as the water evaporates out of this, it will eventually just quit bubbling, and that's when we really start to clarify. So we'll be back to look at that. We're approaching the 1 hour mark here, and what we want to do at this point is make sure we stir this every 5 or 6 minutes and scrape along the bottom of the pan, because you don't want these milk solids to stick to the bottom of the pan, and they will start to stick a little bit, but if you keep rubbing the bottom of the pan, it'll keep those loose and keep them from burning. Okay, we're at about the 1 hour and 5 minute mark here, and you can see this butter starting to clarify. You can start to see the bottom of the pan and see those solids that are collecting down there. You're still going to have some stuff that's floating around here on the top, and what you want to do at this point is just skim a little bit of that off. You can use a spoon or whatever, and just try not to skim too terribly much, but you want to get some of that stuff that's still floating on top and just skim it off. And when you get to this stage, we're at about 1 hour and 12 minutes here. You can see that the boiling has practically subsided. That means that almost all of the water is gone. So this is the point where you have to start watching what's going on, because this is going to heat up now. With the water in there, it was never going to heat up above about 220, but now that most of the water is gone, it's going to heat up. And you see these solids here in the bottom of the pan. We want to just lightly brown those. We don't want to burn them. And that is what differentiates ghee from clarified butter. If all you want is clarified butter, this is where you'll stop. But if you want to go on and make ghee, we want to continue to let this go until these milk solids that are settled to the bottom here start to brown. Okay, we're at 1 hour and 20 minutes, and you can see these milk solids pooling here in the center on the bottom of my pan, and they're starting to change color. They're starting to darken up a little bit, so this is where you really have to watch it. and you can smell the change. It becomes a beautiful nutty aroma as this is happening. And with each minute that passes by, you can see how these milk solids in here are turning brown. They're getting a little darker. I'm going to let these go for just another couple of minutes. I don't want to go too dark. You don't want to let this go too far. There's a really nice sweet spot here. Okay, and after an hour and 25 minutes here, I'm at a place where I'm ready to stop. So I'm going to turn the heat off and take this off the heat. And now that I have it off the heat, nothing's moving. You can see how those milk solids have browned up. So I'm going to let this sit here for about 10 minutes to cool. And now what I'm going to do is just transfer that to mason jars. I've got a canning funnel with some cheesecloth in the top, and we're just going to pour this through. So I've got right at 3 pints of ghee. This is still hot and it's in liquid form. This will solidify at room temperature and look like butter. And now that we have taken all of the milk solids and everything out of this that can spoil, this stuff's stable at room temperature. What I typically do with mine is I let it cool to room temperature, then I put the lid on, and I store these in a dark cabinet at room temperature until I'm ready to use it. Once I pop one of these open, I just throw it in the refrigerator for good practice. So we'll have a look at this again after it solidifies. Okay, this stuff has solidified at room temperature and it looks pretty much like butter. It has a little bit lighter color than the butter. As you can see, you know, it's solid. And this stuff, I just dip it out of the jar with a spoon or whatever and use it for fat for frying. Or not necessarily for frying, but for saute. And it works great. So give this a try. Let me know what you think.